Speaker Tillis, what do you think about a special commission to investigate Representative LaRoque's possible ethics issues that was called for by Speaker Hackney?
We just got the letter today. We're crafting a response. We'll have the Legislative Committee on Ethics take a look at it, determine whether or not it's in their purview, and then act on that. That's the typical process you would go through in this process, and we'll wait and hear back from them, and then I'll make a decision after I've heard from them.
So you will refer it to the Ethics Committee for a decision?
What we've done is the letter has come before us. I met with staff. I told them to determine whether or not they think it's already within their purview. It's very similar to investigation occurred a year or two ago when a request was made. First find out if it falls within their purview. If not, then we need to determine what action, if any, we'll take.
Are you planning to take any action to cap the gas tax next week?
Week after next, we're continuing to work with the Senate to see what, if anything, we'll take up on the 28th and 29th. We'll be in for a skeleton session on the 27th. The key is it's going to have to fit within that 3-day parameter.
Do you see a reason to cap the gas tax?
I think that there's something to be said for trying to stabilize that environment. If you think about it, the gas tax has gone up and down once every 6 months, and that's very destabilizing. So we're trying to take a look at other ways where we can still make sure we have enough funding for roads, but provide a little bit more certainty other than what we're having right now. Went up in July, possibly go up again in January, and then go down again in July. We just think there's got to be a better way to manage it and still maintain baseline funding that we need for roads. Do you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, the former president of the UNC school system, college system proposed 10 suggestions to prevent tuition hikes. Do you support that plan, or do you support the tuition hikes?
We're continuing to meet. I'm meeting with some Board of Governors this week. We're continuing to meet with them. We're looking for recommendations from the Board of Governors and the Chancellors. I met with Chancellor out in App State earlier this week. I think that they need to come around a consensus of that strategy, then we'll act on that.
So you do support or you don't support?
I actually am open to the idea of tuition increases, provided that the revenues stay in the university system and are used to actually increase and better the university system past practices. And one of the reasons why tuition increases have gotten a bad name in the past is past legislatures would take that money and use it for other purposes. I think that's inappropriate.
On the topic of education, there's another question tonight regarding criticism of pre-K funding.
Yep.
How are you responding to people that are still upset with the lack of funding for education, not just in pre-K, but all events in public schools?
We're trying to find ways that we better use the money that we have. We're trying to find ways to drive out waste that we know exists, and we're trying to find ways to provide more money for classroom funding. But we had a fiscal crisis unlike anybody alive in the legislature seen before. We had to deal with the reality that we simply had $3 billion less this year to spend than the prior 2 years.
Will you be dealing with Judge Manning's order?
We don't anticipate that on the 28th.
What do you make of the jobs report that showed only about 1,600 state employees lost their jobs from the state budget? I know that kind of goes to a point you've mentioned before. Do you think that's the true number?
Well, unlike the opposition, which tries to find the largest number and use that to build their case, I'm not gonna put any less stock in that individual number. We're trying to find whether it's 1,600 or 2,600. What we're really trying to do is come up with the facts, and we've got to do that in 2 phases. One, we'll be using the 20-day enrollment numbers for some of the certified staff, and then we'll be using numbers that I'm told by staff will take, or DPI will take until January to get for uncertified staff, and we'll use this interim information we saw in committee today. But clearly, the 20,000, 30,000 numbers that have been used by opponents of our budget are way off, and really puts the credibility of those folks in question. We try to get to the facts. We're going to work on factual numbers.
You mentioned fracking and the bipartisan trip going Sunday, and asked them to meet with environmentalists. Only Republicans are going on that trip, and they're not meeting with any environmentalists.
Well, actually, you may want to, your information may be more current than mine, but at the time that I spoke with Representative Hager, at least 3 Democrat members had been invited to attend. As of last Saturday, they had not planned to meet with any environmental organizations or their Department of Environment or Commerce, and I'd requested that they try and get that teed up. It's a very important part of the process. I don't want to go and just go out into the fields. That makes sense. But I'd also like to talk to the people who are responsible for the regulatory environment and the watchdog groups to give me documented examples versus a lot of the rhetoric that you find on the internet.
Do you think it's a fair use of taxpayer money if they don't meet with both sides and it's only a one-sided trip?
I think that every time that they go up there, they gain more information. It's good, but at the end of the day, I want broad-based information to make public policy decisions here. So if they don't get to it in this meeting, they're clearly going to have to get to it when we study the process. Keep in mind that the first phase of this bill is to do nothing more but to begin to study the regulatory environment that North Carolina needs, and certainly they would have to be in front of those groups before we would take up any policy in the General Assembly. This is just the first step. And it's irrational to me to understand, or it seems to be an irrational position that says let's at least not do the detailed work so that we can come up and see if we've got a policy that the majority of the legislature would support and ideally the governor would support.
I need clarification on one more thing you mentioned. You mentioned the minorities, if they withdraw their objections to the special session, something about bringing up jobs. I wasn't quite clear what you meant there.
We heard 10 or 15 minutes of debate. People say we shouldn't come back until next May.
True.
And my point is, if the members of the minority party have jobs ideas and they want us to take that up when we come back, I'm happy to do that. But the fact of the matter is, we are being criticized for even coming back and taking care of technical amendments, trying to get the energy jobs bill passed and other matters. I'm just simply saying, if they want to come to the table, be proactive, and propose job creation measures, I welcome it. We'd welcome anybody that's got a good idea that doesn't place the burden on taxpayers.
Representative Faison's plan going to get a hearing?
Representative Faison's plan calls for about an $800 million tax increase. Bad timing.
One more question from us. In the wake of the Penn State scandal, do you think North Carolina's sexual abuse reporting laws are strong enough, or as strong as they need to be?
You know, we'll look at that. We don't want a knee-jerk reaction to something that happened up in Pennsylvania, but it does raise the question. It is something that we should look at. And really, you know, when you look at what happened in Pennsylvania, where there's some systemic problems there that could have been addressed through good public policy reporting, clarifying, and they've mentioned that as one of the things they need to look at. That's certainly something we can look at when we come back in the short session.
There's a lot of states looking, to evaluate their own policies because of this.
Well, I think that's right. I think there may be members that'll look at it in the interim, but it would certainly not be something we take up before next May.
On that point, the legislature passed a bill that took away the mandatory reporting for principals. So how does that jibe with your concerns about making sure those are tough enough here in North Carolina?
Well, I think a part of what we've done with the mandatory reporting for principals and some of the other reporting is seeing if we're really adding value. And we need to look at not only educational institutions, but all areas of government. So I think that one, it's not fair to say that necessarily means that we would remove all reporting requirements. In that particular one, we've heard from principals and other people that it wasn't adding a lot of value and was taking time away from the classroom. But that or any other one can be relooked.
Thank you very much.